What's up everyone, this is Soul Reaper, and in this video I want to go ahead and show off what I'm going to be using for my build in Borderlands 3. I plan to play on Zane, and I know there's a lot of love out there right now for Flak, but at the end of the day I think that Zane is just more appealing to my kind of playstyle. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Now, having looked over everything already, I went back and forth as to what kind of skills I wanted to focus on, specifically what I wanted from Zane at the end of the day when I played with him. And looking at everything, I decided that the main thing I wanted was gun damage. I saw there was a lot of different ways to increase it, and overall what the skill tree build is going to be is increasing your base gun damage, and that should just go ahead and increase your damage per second overall. On top of that, I do plan to use two different skills, so getting into that now, the first one I plan on using is going to be the Digiclone, and also after a lot of indecision between the Sentinel drone and the barrier, I'm going to be choosing the barrier. Alright, so from there, let's go ahead and take a look at the skills we want to be using from here on out. So like I said, I want to focus a lot on overall gun damage, and for starters, one of the best ways to increase your gun damage is with this skill right here, which is Synchronicity. Now this skill gives you increased gun damage for every action skill that you have active, so at this point this is going to be the first one that I want to go ahead and max out. So now at this point we have 20% extra gun damage per action skill. So now at this point, at level 7 already in the game, we should be doing 40% extra damage whenever we have both of our action skills active. With that in mind, we want to be able to have our action skills active as often and as long as possible. So with that in mind, from here I want to go ahead and focus on this other skill, which is Borrowed Time. So that's just going to go ahead and increase your overall action skill duration, but if you have both of them active at the same time, that'll end up being 30% longer overall, which will make you do more damage for a longer period of time. So now from here, because we already have it figured out how to have our action skill longer, now I want to get it more often. So we're going to go over to this skill tree and we're going to go ahead and get Adrenaline. So what Adrenaline does, it's a passive ability that lets your action skill cooldown rate increase, but with that in mind, it is based on the overall shield percentage that you have. So to get the full effect of this, you are going to want to have full shields, so just keep that in mind whenever you use it. Now, at this point, I don't want to go any further in this area. Instead, we're going to go ahead and head back to the double agent skill tree and go from there. Before I go too much further, I want to go ahead and focus on the augments. After maxing out the first skill, which was Synchronicity, you should have just gone ahead and equipped Binary System. That just makes it that every time you switch with your clone, a Cryonova is triggered. But at this point, we now have the option of which other one we want. And here, looking at the two options, I think because I want a source of health regeneration whenever possible, and that applies to shields, I think I'm going to go with this one right here, which is called, that one. Anyways, so that one pretty much makes it so whenever your clone takes damage, Zane's shield is restored by a portion of that damage, with that portion being 100% of the damage taken. So for every bullet that your Digiclone takes in damage, your shield regenerates by that, and I see no reason not to take this. Now going back into here, I'm going to go ahead and start off with this one because it is such a good option. It's quick breather. It makes it so that anytime you swap places with your clone, your shields immediately begin to recharge. But we need to go ahead and get to the next section. Now what I think the best option to do from here is to immediately get this skill, which is Donnybrook. Now, I don't want to max it out because right now what I just want from it is the increased health regeneration. What it does is so that every time you get a kill, you and your Digiclone get increased gun damage and health regeneration for a few seconds, that being 8 seconds. So again, this goes right back into gun damage, and also it lets you have health regeneration. But before going any further with it, I want to unlock Fractal Frags, which makes it so that whenever you use your Digiclone, it'll go ahead and throw a grenade, and it also has a chance of throwing another grenade every time you kill an enemy. So that's just going to go ahead and increase your damage output. I don't see any reason not to get this. It's not gun damage or health regeneration, but it is definitely a good option still overall. From here, to get the next section, what we want to do is head back to Donnybrook and go ahead and put as many points as we can until the next section unlocks. And then this is where things start to get a little bit more difficult. I like the idea of using Old You. It reminds me of that pretty much anytime one of his Digiclones died, you got to revive. And playing the pre-sequel, it would come in handy in some really difficult times. So I want to go ahead and use that here again. From here, what I want to do is go ahead and equip Pocket Full of Grenades and max that out. Right now, it might not seem like it makes much sense because I didn't exactly go with this skill, which is Duct Tape Mod, which has the chance of letting you shoot grenades with every first shot in your gun. Now, it does definitely sound like a good option, but the reason I didn't choose it is because it only applies to your first shot, and that to me doesn't sound like it's worth it overall. I don't exactly plan to reload after every time I pull the trigger. There are going to be times where I just use up all the ammo in the magazine, and I just don't think this is worth it in the long run. But this Pocket Full of Grenades will go ahead and go into Boom Enhance. So with that said, let's go ahead and unlock this fully. We have one more skill point to use, so with that I'm going to go back to Donnybrook, level it up one more, and now Boom Enhance. Alright, so this is where we can go ahead and take a look at some of the other things. We did get these other augments, which one of them is Doppelbanger, which lets you end your action skill early in order to set off an explosion. I don't want to go with that, and the reason why is because I want to keep first binary system, which is going to let you do cryo damage, because of the skill that we're going to start getting set up in this one, with the idea of getting calm, cool, collected. Now I suppose because that is rather far away, you can switch over to anything else in the meantime, but by the end of this skill tree, I have in mind to go ahead and go back and use binary system. There's also digital distribution, which makes it so that whenever you take health damage while your clone is active, a portion of that damage is shared to your clone instead. That could be a good option. That one's kind of up in the air for me personally. I think at this point I'd rather just go ahead and switch with my clone again and just get shields back. So I don't think that's what I'm going to go with. So for now, these are going to be the two skills I'm using. But I could see Doppelbanger as an alternative for binary system in the meantime. So at this point we are right above the capstone skill Double Barrel, and we need to get it for sure. Now this skill right here, Supersonic Man, was really getting my interest because I do like the idea of having increased movement speed, but at the end of the day I decided not to just because of the skills that I'm going to use with the shield, which by the way you can go ahead and equip this right now. What that I mean is that if you touch your barrier right now, you're going to have increased movement speed. So taking a look at the other two options, there is Trick of the Light, which does bonus shock damage to enemies that aren't targeting you, and there's also Like a Ghost, which gives you a chance to ignore bullets and just let them phase right through you. But taking a look at these two skills, I'm going to start off with Like a Ghost. I don't like this one because, one, it's just such a small percentage chance. Even if you do boost it up all the way, I don't feel like the percentage chance of it saving you from going down into fight for life mode is high enough to warrant spending 3 of your skill points in here. And looking at Trick of the Light, I do like the idea of doing bonus damage, but the fact that it's shock damage really puts me off. Looking at past Borderlands games, shock damage really only has any sort of impact on shields, and if your enemy's not using a shield, well then pretty much any other element besides shock is better for that. I don't know, it could be different with this game, but until I have my hands on it myself, I'm going to say to just ignore this and move on to something else. So that brings me to the current option at hand, and I'm going to actually go ahead and go right back up to the top and increase my magazine size. Also, let's go ahead and max out Donnybrook while we're at it. So at this point we have Double Barrel, and what it does is give your clone an exact copy of the current weapon that you have, and also makes it so that every time you swap places with the clone, Zane and his clone gain increased gun damage by 20%. So just looking at the skill tree for this one, what we have right now is 20% extra gun damage per active action skill, and we have 2 action skills, so potentially what that means is 40% extra gun damage. That was right off the start. Then we have this kill skill right here, which gives you an extra 15% gun damage. And then at the very end with Double Barrel, we are now doing 75% extra gun damage. 75%, nearly double. I think this is pretty good just for starters, but there's a little bit more that you can do in the other section that'll make it even better. Touching on this again real quick, the Hitman skill tree, I decided not to use the Sentinel drone just because I felt like the different skills for it weren't really my style. I also didn't like how long the cooldown was for it. It also seems like it could potentially do more damage than Zane's Digiclone, but in the meantime, I think this is what I want to go with. I'm also not planning on using any of the kill skills just because looking at them, they aren't gun damage based. They do affect damage per second, like the reload speed and the even weapon swap speed, life steal, things like that. At the end of the day, because it's a kill skill and I don't plan on getting all the way to the very bottom seeing red, I decided to just go ahead and take a pass on this entire tree for now anyways. So with that said, looking back at Undercover, we're not going to reach the capstone skill with this one, and that's perfectly fine. I don't actually think that the capstone for this one is too amazing or anything like that. What I actually want to go ahead and get though is this one right here, Calm, Cool, Collected. So what it does, it's not a kill skill, it's actually more of a freeze skill, I guess. Whenever you freeze an enemy, Zane's shields begin recharging. If Zane's shield's already full, his health begins recharging instead. If his health is full, then your action skill cooldowns and durations are immediately reset. So to me that says the potential to have your action skills either last longer or come up more often, and that is one of the things you want overall with this build, as that it increases your gun damage as a whole. So that's what we're building towards. So with that in mind, Brain Freeze makes it so that every time you score a critical hit, there's a chance that you slow your enemies down, and this effect stacks until they freeze, and freezing your enemies is exactly what we want to do. Let's max it out all the way to 5, and from there, Confident, Competence. The bonuses are amazing, no reason not to get it. Looking at the augments, I would say that Nanities or some shite is a good one. It gives you health regeneration, decreased shield recharge delay, and also improved reload speed, so let's go ahead and equip that. The other option at this point is also making your barrier into a dome. I don't like that because when I have this in mind, I plan on running around with the shield, so I'm not going to be equipping this in the time being. So from here, what I think is actually the best option is to go ahead and increase your shield recharge rate and decrease your shield recharge delay. This one, best served cold, has my interest a lot, especially because, like I said, what we want to do is freeze the enemies. I'm just not sure how useful it's going to be. It really does depend a lot on your enemies being close together. So even though, like I said, I want to get the best chance to freeze your enemies to potentially get either health regeneration, shield regeneration, or reset your action skills, I'm instead going to prioritize these other two, which is really expensive jacket. What this skill does is make it so any status effect that is applied to you, the duration is minus 50%, so you're just taking less damage again. And even again over here with the utility belt, you gain increased resistance to non-elemental damage, and there's even a kill skill applied to this, making it so that all elemental damage you take is converted to non-elemental damage. Both of these skills are just great when it comes to life expectancy. You are much less likely to be taken out, and I think for that reason they are great. Now, remember that other thing I said about gun damage? We have yet another instance of it right here. You can go ahead and use this one for increased reload speed and movement speed. Reload speed, of course, will also impact your damage per second, but so will gun damage. Personally, I actually am going to go ahead and just take retaliation because I don't know how often I'm actually going to be touching the barrier. There is quite a distinction between being near the barrier and touching it. If this one were just being near the barrier, I would say this is the better option, but the fact that you have to touch it is what kind of loses me in that sense, so I'm going to go ahead and swap it out for retaliation. Looking at this one, the turns field, again, this goes back to earlier. It does shock damage. It does stagger your enemies, but it does shock damage, and I just don't really value shock damage too much when it comes to Borderlands, because after you take out enemy shields, it becomes pretty much useless. So at this point, you have your different options. You can go ahead and increase your maximum shield capacity if that's what you want to do. So it makes it so that if you take damage, you get an increased damage resistance from that weapon type. Or there's also this rise to the occasion, which is health regeneration focus, and one of the things I said I wanted to focus on. But I'm actually going to really suggest that you skip over this skill. And the reason for that is because of the other things that you already have. I see 1% of max health per second being pretty useless when you look back at this skill, Donnybrook, and see that you can potentially be getting 2.5% of missing health per second for 8 seconds every time you get a kill. So that comes out to 20% of your health for every kill, and I think that really is just significantly better than what you could get over here, and for that reason kind of useless. But at this point, like I said, it is kind of up to you. I'm going to go ahead and use best served cold just because I do want the increased freeze possibility, and with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and now get calm, cool, collected, and you have one more skill point here. Don't spend it all in one place. There's a few skills down on this Hitman skill tree that I do like and I do wish I could have, specifically the fire rate and the reload speed. I love the ideas of having that, but it's just not necessarily an option. So with that in mind, actually what I think I'm going to do, I also see this skill being a potentially good one, Nerves of Steel, and I think this is actually going to be the one I go with. It makes it so that you get increasing accuracy and handling. The longer your shields are full, the greater the bonus, and there's max stacks of 15, so at the end of this you could have potentially 30% increased accuracy, and we'll just call that 40% increased handling. That's math, and I don't really feel like doing it right now. So at this point, until we get more skill points available to us, this is going to be the build that I use when I am playing Borderlands 3 as Zane. Again, if we look back at the different bonuses we get, Synchronicity we'll just call 40% extra gun damage. Donnybrook makes it another 15%. Double barrel takes that 55% to 75%. Your barrier now makes it 100% damage bonus. Confident competence perks that up to even 20% more. Now you're at 120% damage. And retaliation finally, another 10%, 130% damage. So as you can see, there's a lot of gun damage built into this skill build. And the idea, again, is also to make sure that you have your skills up and running as quickly and as often as possible. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the video. If you like the build at all, let me know by leaving a like. If you have any suggestions for how to use it otherwise, let me know down in the comment sections what you would do differently. I could potentially do another video on this, but with a different tweak and possibly even using the Sentinel skill build. But with this in mind, I think this is how I'm going to be playing Zane when I get my hands on Borderlands 3. Subscribe for more content in the future, and I will see you next time.